Can you give us a quick introduction into who you are?
Yeah, that's a broad question, isn't it? At the moment, we run a business program for online coaches, kind of full spectrum now. It used to be specifically ones that were already established and then kind of building them into actual businesses. But we've got stuff across the board at the moment. I ended up doing that because I had my own fitness business previously, and grew that to quite a sizable business myself. And kind of struggled at certain points with finding help for it. I feel like when I first started, there was loads of stuff of this is how you set up your coaching program and this is how you post on Instagram. But then when it actually come to running a company, there was nothing that I found anyway. Maybe I didn't look hard enough, but I didn't find anything like that. So when we kind of reached kind of as much as my brain would allow me to take with the fitness business, and then we kind of moved into doing the business coaching from there.
How long ago did you start on your own, your own fitness business?
2019. If you ask the tax man, it was May 2019.
Okay.
There may have been some cash payments for personal training before that were definitely declared, but the official date was May 2019. We officially.
Okay. And so so over what period did you get to a point whereby you're just so busy that you need to bring people on?
Ooh, I was right. So I was quite lucky so I started off when I finished uni, I got into teaching. I was a school teacher for about 4 years in total, if you include all the training years and stuff like that, because it's the first 2 years you're basically not a teacher, you're training. But I did 4 years in total working in schools. And then I didn't really fancy getting paid 24 grand a year for the rest of my life. And the ceiling of a head teacher being about 100K, I was my dad had been a builder. When I say, he did roads and stuff, groundworks.
Oh yeah.
I used to go out with my dad doing groundworks when I was 16, 17, and I'd work through the summer with him, and I get paid what everyone else got paid, which was all right. So I realized I was taking a pay cut from doing playgrounds and flag curbing and stuff like that, and nobody was telling me what to do. I didn't have all these constraints on my life that you have by being a teacher. It was a bit shit in the winter, but it was nice in the summer, so it balanced itself out.
Sure.
Sometimes it was pissing down and freezing, but then for a couple of months a year, you got to kind of just work outside. And I thought there's got to be more to it than this, than just coming in and clocking a paycheck. And I think I'm just not a very employable person, if I'm truly honest. I think some people just don't have it. I'm very questioning. I always want to know the reason why behind things. I want to understand the logic behind certain decisions. And I think when you work for someone else, or you work within it's not really working for someone else working in a school, but you work within a system.
Sure.
And if you don't quite get the system, it can be really, really frustrating. And it's almost one of them that you got told to like it or lump it. So
were you like that in school as well? Would you question in school? Would you, not when you were a teacher, but when you were actually a kid in school, would you question?
I was a bit of a know-it-all in school. Yeah. We were in, I don't know whether you had it when you went to school, but they had a scheme called Gifted and Talented, where they took all the kids that got certain SAT scores when they came in year 7, and you got to do you got out of school to do stuff go to university days and
cool.
make rockets and stuff which is bullshit really. It didn't do anything, but it got you out of school on a Wednesday, so I was all for it. So we did that. I sat my GCSEs early when I was in school, and then there was just used to I don't know. I think you question quite a lot, just why am I doing this? What's the reason for this? And people don't really give you a straight answer, and I wasn't really a fan of it. So that was one of the reasons why I left teaching, because it was very much the same thing. I don't know why I thought it was going to be any different going back as a member of staff than it was as a kid, but it was. So I did that, moved into personal training from there, and then I was quite lucky because I worked at some very good gyms when I first started. So I've only had a very brief period working in a commercial gym.
Okay.
I got sacked after, I think, a month.
Why did
I think it lasted a month because I'm just not very employable at all. Yeah. And it was one of those situations where even though you paid them a rent, because it was a big company. I won't say which company it was, but like one of the major ones. And they feel like you work for them. And we had a lot of like butting heads of like, I don't physically work for you. I just rent the space. And they saw it a very different way, especially the regional manager, which is what my final conversation was before I got sacked. I don't deal very well with just being told this is the way it is for the sake of it. But then I worked in some private facilities, which were really good. I actually sandwiched that, like the JD stuff was in the middle. But the private facilities I worked in were always like really heavily transformation based. So like when I went online, I was already charging like 1,500 quid for a 12-week package of personal training, which outside of London's I thought was quite expensive. And then, you know, I had a good portfolio of transformations. So like we launched, and because I'd been just layering all the transformations, and obviously it was a lot cheaper for a lot of people who'd already inquired with me. So I think when we started, we ran it at like 600 quid for a 12-week transformation. So it was nearly like 30% of like what I was charging else, like, you know, to work in the gym. So loads of people bit my hand off, and we did like 8K month one.
Awesome.
So like, yeah, it went like straight to 6 figures, and I've never really earned less than that, like since I started.
So at that point then...
I spent 3 years making fuck all as a personal trainer. So it did average out like, but...
And then when that happened, is that when you thought like, oh shit, I need people to come on and help me to like grow this?
Well, yeah. So I ended up by the summer doing like 92 clients, and I think I was charging like on an average of £200 a month. So it was like heavy, but then like I weren't doing content, and I wasn't able to really I didn't have time to do calls. I was just doing check-ins all day. And like we were quite heavy with the work that we did for our clients. So like I had, obviously because I'd come from working in a gym, I was very much like, I know that people aren't going to get on with this if I just send them a weekly like reminder of like, hey, do you check in, and then give them some feedback. Like people needed more. So, like we responded to like everything they did. So like we moved on to an app really quickly. In fact, I paid one of my best mates to load every client that had a spreadsheet onto the app while I was on holiday in Turkey, which was a bit tight, but I paid him, so it was all right. So he spent the week toiling on that, come back, all the clients were on the app. But then kind of every day we'd give them like a review of the day before. So like in the morning, we'd be like, oh, well done on hitting your steps yesterday. Like, good job on your nutrition. Your protein's a little bit low. And then we'd give them feedback on the workout as well. Cause it like, obviously, you know, it works like they track like what they did last week. And we were like, right, well, you've done the same weight on that. Is there a reason? Like, you know, this is actually down from last week. Like, how are you feeling? So we gave them feedback on like every single workout and every single day. And doing that for 96 people was rough. So
would that be like a Loom video or something?
No, so that was via like just like a messaging feature. But then obviously we did a proper weekly check-in where like we reviewed like the overall progress and then made amendments.
Got it.
But it was a hefty workload, like especially over 96 people. So by summer, my best mate had just come back from Australia. He was working in a bar called Oaxaca, which is like a bar/restaurant. It's like a Mexican thing. And he just found out he had like a hole in his heart. So like he was playing pretty much professional American football, as close as you can get without being in America. And he just had to retire on the spot. So he was just working in this bar. And I was like, well, I've got some work for you. So I managed to convince him to leave the bar and take on this like really weird role of like that I'd kind of cobbled together that was like doing bits of everything that like I didn't have time to do. So like, within like 6 months, we'd hired staff already.
So did you just like kind of figure shit out on the way? Like as you went, you just thought, I need someone to come and plug this. I need someone to come and help with that. And you just built out from there?
Yeah. So for our marketing and stuff like that, I always used help from like business coaches and stuff like that because I'd never like done marketing before. But then when it got to like, building out staff and stuff like that, there wasn't really like, it was more like ad hoc, like, oh, maybe we thought about getting an assistant. And then it would be my job to go and find, where do you find an assistant from? Like, it was my job to like go and find an assistant, hire an assistant. And then what the fuck did she do? It's like, poor Sarah has been my assistant for like, I mean, assistant's probably like an underrepresentation of what she does. She just does everything. But like, she's been with us for like, it must be nearly 3 years now. And
wow, okay,
yeah, and her role has like changed like 7 times. Like I don't think she even knows what she does anymore. But that was luck, that one. And then when I realized that like shit, I need a better system for doing this, that kind of stuff, I started to like build out structures and stuff like that for it.
Okay.
Because the first 2 hires were messy, but I was quite lucky that obviously Lewis is my best mate, so I could like I changed his contract like every 2 weeks, which was shit for him, but like it was just you know, the needs were changing so much. And then Sarah is just, she didn't really care. But then after that, I was like, right, I can't keep getting people and just like not fucking them about, but like changing the goalposts on them every week. My staff now would probably say that I still do that, but for the most part, I try and keep it pretty structured. And then so that was all kind of off my own back, and that was the bit that I feel can really like fuck up your business. Like if you do like if you do an Instagram campaign wrong, like nothing bad really happens. If you bring the wrong kind of people into your business and getting signed contracts and getting like legal issues and stuff like that, it can be catastrophic almost.
What advice would you give to people that are at that stage that are now looking for someone?
Get help with doing it. Like, so like when we do consults with people, like we say, like we're quite open with the strategy that we think is right for them. So if we're like, okay, right, you need to go get an appointment setter, and you probably need like your first coach to come on board and start taking off some of the slack. And some people are like, oh well, I could just do that myself. And I'm like,
right,
of course you can, like crack on. And then they go and they end up like getting an appointment setter that's useless and they don't know how to train them. And like the stuff that we do is like an amalgamation of like how we did it, and mostly how I did it wrong, and then how I got it right like the 5th time round. So it's been it's been a lot of trial and error, but it's been people, you know, that have come and gone, and money that's been lost, and time that's been wasted. And like to think about it, it took us from 2019 to like maybe it took us nearly 2 years to get up to like, you know, 60-70K a month with our fitness business. Okay. And that was we always had clients. Like we never had a lead gen problem. It was purely having the staff and the fulfillment requirements to actually deal with it. And it took that long because that was the problems. Like the bottleneck was staff. And this time around, we've done, you know, we've done over 2 million in the first year. And it's not because I'm better at marketing than I was then. It's because the staff structure's much slicker. And when we get people in, we get them up to scratch and we hit target within 4 weeks. And we don't waste time.
I think there's such a huge part to it, like understanding the real value of having good people in your business that can help support what you're doing and help you to grow. And then you all kind of benefit from it and you all just grow together.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get the wrong idea about it though, and they go about it the wrong way. And I think that comes from maybe potentially getting advice from people who don't have overly strong personalities. So like I've seen people like that have taken advice from other people and it's been actually quite poor. It's like, oh, I get people that maybe don't want to do things on their own and don't want to have like any responsibility and don't have any business brain themselves, you know, almost like you can control them and they're never going to be a threat to your business. But for me, that's a really like scarcity mindset way of looking at bringing on staff. And I think that's actually how you get low quality staff that don't think for themselves, that
for sure
robots. So like we get a lot of people that come in and they've got staff that are like not performing. And it's just because that person was never going to perform because they just hired an unskilled person that was unmotivated and not very driven to succeed. And they couldn't think for themselves and not very self-motivated. I'm like, why did you hire them? It's like, oh, because they were never going to, you know, they're never going to go out on their own and steal my clients. And I'm like, if the first problem that you're thinking of when you hire staff is, I really hope this person doesn't steal my clients, like, fucking hell, do you know what I mean? That's like boarding an airplane and thinking like, fuck me, I hope the pilot doesn't fall asleep and crashes. It's such a weird mindset. So like one of the things that we try and do is like make sure that people get really high quality candidates and have room for them to grow almost like within the company and have like bigger visions for like where that can go. Because that's how I think people get good quality staff. And I think that's a problem. That's a problem with people scaling the fitness business at the minute. Like they're all about getting cheap, easy to plug in, but nothing work is never easy. So like, you know, when they hire like offshore agencies for like VA work and stuff like that, like for me, it always seems to be pretty catastrophic for people. And I think it's because they want an easy answer rather than like hiring and training themselves.
Yeah. I totally agree. From my own experience of hiring people, when in the past we've hired people that perhaps weren't as entrepreneurial, because that's probably what people are trying to avoid bringing someone in. I find that it actually takes up more of my time and more of my energy by having that person come into the business. And then I spend this huge amount of time trying to micromanage that person because they're not doing their job properly. And so now not only am I paying someone to do it, I'm also now wasting my time, which is costing money, to look over that person's shoulder and kind of do it for them anyway. It's a complete waste of time.
It becomes an issue, doesn't it? Because you're not solving the problem that you tried to in the first place, which is I don't have any more time to give to this task, because you end up doing it. Like we've got our wage bill's pretty hefty. Like most of our executive team are all on over six figures, and there's no full-time members of staff that bill less than $4,000 a month that work for us. Right. That's even appointment setters. Like even our both of our appointment setters bill around $4,000 a month, with the on-target earnings and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Like, but it's hefty, and I think a lot of people can't. I was saying this to someone yesterday. The reason I think why people don't really reach the potential with the business is because they can't stomach like seeing numbers that maybe they used to earn going out to members of staff, and they get a little bit scared about it.
Yeah. But do you think that you have like a detachment from that kind of emotional attachment to money that allows you to do that?
Yeah, because I make more money than I ever knew what to do with or ever thought I would. So like I remember, like I said, my dad was a ground worker. So like the best year my dad ever had was making $100,000. And bearing in mind that was like revenue, and he was a ground worker, so that was like he had to take plant out of that and materials, and obviously he wasn't doing the job on his own. He started to pay the other lads, but like his business revenue was $100K, and I was like, fucking hell, like I'd love to be able to do that. And like obviously when I was teaching, like the head teachers were on $100K, so like I always had $100K as like this number in my mind that like you know, you can get pretty much whatever you want if you make 100. Like you're not gonna have a house with a swimming pool, but like you can live comfy. Like your meals are always paid. Your heating bills, you're not going to worry about putting the heating on in the winter. You'll have a decent car. Like you go on, you know, a couple of family holidays a year. You have a nice house, like with a garden. You don't have to live in a shithole. Like it's great. So like I always had that as like my like goal. So then when I did it like year one, I was like, right, anything else now is a fucking bonus. Like anything else is sweet. And I think, I definitely got a detachment from money, because like I wouldn't be able to spend £100,000 a month on wages if I didn't, because it I don't like my VAT bill, to be fair, but I feel like that it's being like strong armed out of me, and I don't feel like I get what I pay for, but like I do for my staff, so I don't mind. But I think part of it is almost this like it's almost become like a game now in a sense, which is weird. Like, it's like, how far can I really go? And I think I said this on another podcast. Like, it's quite scary for me that realistically, like, I'm only ever going to be finished when I fail, because like, I'm going to keep going until there's a point where I'm like, oh, well, that fucked up. Like, that's back to never mind. Start again. Like, and I feel like it's going to get to that point eventually, or else I'll just never be satisfied.
I remember reading something that was describing how people like the ultra wealthy, money for them just becomes almost like points in a game, where it's they can attribute how much they're earning to like levels that they're going up in a game. And so they don't think about it as like, oh, I've earned like 150 grand, I can go and buy a Lambo. They think of it as that's a new benchmark that they've overcome, which now means that they're doing better and better.
Yeah, like there's points, obviously. Like there was a lot of things that like once I got over 100 grand, I was like, right, well, realistically, what am I going to do here? Am I going to buy a new watch or a nicer car or what, this and that? And I do that when there's an excess of money like lying around. But a lot of the next stuff I did was like make sure my family was sorted. So like my dad had cancer. He was thinking about going back and working as like a DPD driver. He had bowel cancer, so he had like a portion of his stomach. I don't know whether it was his stomach or his bowel, but he had something removed. So he couldn't do manual labor anymore. So he was going to like go back to work, like working for DPD and stuff. I think he's 75.
Yeah.
Well, 74. He'll get me for that. But at the time when he retired, he was like early 70s, like 71. And I was like, there's no way you're going back to work. But obviously my mum's a teaching assistant at school. So her wage is like, I don't want to say what it is, but it's not enough to run on for sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could Google teaching assistant average wages and be pretty shocked. So like one of the things that I wanted to do was make sure that obviously like they had enough money. Now they, you know, they're not investment people. Like they don't have the financial education for that. So like it's state pension. So like even then I wanted them to, you know, I give them money to go on holiday every year. So like my family are looked after, which is, you know, one of like the next level of stuff. Like, yeah, it's okay being able to like pay for this for myself, but also like my parents. But then, yeah, there does become a ceiling where you're like, okay, like more money doesn't really make that much of a difference. That I can't keep giving people money, like for the sake of it. The next stage, it is almost like a game, but I don't really look at it as like the number. I look at it as like, right, we make this, and I always try and keep 50% margins.
Okay.
We could actually run less, like we could run leaner for sure. But I always like, if we make more money, I'm like, okay, like so we've got this amount that we can now reinvest back into the business now. Like, what can we go and get that's going to make it better? So that almost becomes like a bit of a game thing. It's almost like upgrading things and like getting new people and moving that forward. So that becomes quite cool because like we do grow like quite quickly, like quarter on quarter. So that's quite nice to be able to go like, okay, we've got all this money in the pot now. Like, who do we go and get?
Yeah, for sure.
So we've managed to remove every single agency worker out of the business. So like everybody that works for us now works directly for us full time, like copywriting, web design, funnel design, tech and automations, like all of that stuff. And we've been able to go out and get like top people, not just like a boys club where it's like kind of I know everyone and we're all like, hey, we're having a good day. Like it's, you know, they're all like industry leading people, which is pretty cool. So
why do you think that you've managed to do that in such a short time frame when it takes some people like years to do it, like years and years and years?
That's a really good question. That I couldn't tell you, to be honest with you. It'd probably take a smarter mind than me to dissect it. Like I'm still a bit of skin in my pants. There's a couple of things that I feel like I'm different with that maybe like are different from the rest of the industry. One is that I genuinely, like, you know, when people say like they don't care about like what people think.
Yeah.
Like, I probably would if people like said it to me directly and like I cared about their opinion. Like you know, I wouldn't go that far. But I genuinely don't care about how I look to the rest of the industry. Not in a sense of like, I'll just say what I want and fuck everyone else who doesn't agree with me. But like, I will quite happily learn from anyone, even if they're perceived to be competition or even a level below me. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not adverse to being like, oh, that's a really good idea, that, and I think that could be really useful. Do you mind having a chat about it? And actually just being normal. Like, whereas I think there's a lot of like cloak and daggers and people like trying to steal my stuff, so I'm not going to say anything. And there's very little collaborative effort, I feel, in this industry. Whereas like, I don't mind. Like, I'll sit down and have a chat with people about anything. And I think that really everyone's going to synthesize information differently, in my opinion, anyway. So like, I think there's a lot to be gained from like people sharing information. So like, I learn everything that I can, and I'll test it in my own business. And then if it doesn't work, I'll then I'll think, right, is it my problem? Like, have I done it wrong? And I'll look at that first. And then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I don't want to say like I'm humble, because that's a bit of an overused word, but like I feel like I don't have a lot of ego with like asking for help and being like, oh, you're doing that really well. Would you mind like running us through it? And I think that that's been a big difference, because like I'm not afraid to ask for help, even of people that, you know, potentially could bite. You know, like, you know what certain people are like. If you ask me, for sure, me asking for help because they must be shit. I'm like, I don't care if you say that, because like at the end of the day, like the business will do the talking. Like, I don't need public opinion of me to be like, oh, he's this master, grandmaster, fucking marketer, agent, or whatever. I just need to be able to be better than I was last month.
And you can see it with how transparent you are with like stuff that you give out to people. So your Instagram is a prime example. Like the amount of free content that you give that is of extremely high value, with that obviously, as we said in the beginning, comes across in a way that you generally just don't care. Like, because you're giving out this information, it's free value for people. And if someone wants to come and have a discussion about it, then they're open to.
It's just, I think obviously a lot of coaches reflect their own buying habits, like with their programs. And like, I'm very much of like, I will binge people before I invest in them. So like, I will go through everyone's back catalog in like 30 minutes. I'll look through absolutely everything they've done. And there's never really a part of me that goes, oh, well, maybe I'll just do all the free stuff because I must have got all the good stuff now. And what else could they have? Like, so I think that's more of a reflection of my own habits. And like, if I think someone does good work, and I've seen examples of their good work, and even better, if some of their work has actually helped me move forward without me even speaking to them or paying them, my brain instantly like, well, if I pay them, I'm going to get more out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the kind of ethos that we want to foster. Like, you know, if for us to turn over $1 million a month, we probably need to work with total about 600 or 700 coaches at any one time. Okay. So that means that we don't really need to we don't need to monopolize the market. Like we can work with people that think that way. So it allows us to really kind of work with people that have that same mindset. And if people just want to rinse free stuff, like they're going to do that anyway. Like no, they were never going to buy from us in the first place, but you know, they might tell someone. We might be able to change the mind. You know, they might be in that mindset because they've earned $1,000 a month for the last 12 months of their career, and they're very scarce because, you know, bills are bills, and it turns you that way. So maybe if we can help make some more money, and then, you know, in 6 months they'll be like, oh, you know what, actually, like that program has really done a lot for me, so I'll do this.
What would you, to that person that is like earning $1,000 a month or something, and they feel like they're struggling, what sort of things could we give them to take away from this that could help them with their business?
Ask people for free stuff. I would personally, like, I'd be frank with people, and we're quite like that, which is why we built some of the stuff that we built. Because listen, this industry is weird. Like, this industry is such a strange one, because I don't know any other industry that forces people down a route of self-employment as the first port of call.
Yeah.
I really don't. I struggle to think of another one that really stems in my mind. And I hear people all the time say, I'm sick of seeing coaches getting a business mentor as soon as they're qualified. And I'm like, but what choice do they have? Like, where's the career support otherwise? Like, you've got a couple of like, maybe like David Lloyd and Nuffield and stuff like that have like salaried gym roles, but there's only so many of them. And if you don't live near one, you're fucked. Like, Pure Gym has no salaried role other than like that rent for hours kind of scheme, which realistically leaves you at zero, and then it's up to you to make the rest of the money yourself. So like, I don't know any other profession that likes to be as, you know, respected and like well thought of as personal trainers want to be, that has no actual career progression for new trainers. There's nothing. You're just fucking out in the Wild West on your own. It's like the edge qualification, knock yourself out. And people are like, well, just be a good coach first. I'm like, how, if I've got no clients? Like, how do I be a good coach if I'm struggling to feed myself? Like,
so how do they? What would you say to a person?
I would ask for free help. There's enough people, but the problem with free help is people don't do it. That's the issue. They don't do it, and they don't trust it enough. So like, you've got to find one person, and also there's noise. We try and limit it. So like, we don't say, oh, this doesn't work and this doesn't work and this does. Relatively, for most people, most stuff does work broadly. It's generally down to the individual that's applying it, whether it works or not. So we try and not do that, because we just feel like it confuses people even more.
Sure.
Find one person that you trust, that you think you fit well with kind of their ethos, and say like, look, I don't have any money to pay you. I really don't. What would you do if you were in my position? And then conscientiously, surely they'll be like, all right, this is what I would do if I was you. I'd do this, and this. This should help you do A, B, and C. And then if you do that, come back to us when you've got this amount, and then we can get you some like real structured help. But
Okay.
You know, like for us, like we've got our YouTube, we have a full series on like how to get from 0 to 5K in a month. That's obviously completely free. You don't even need to give us your email for that. You just need to watch it. There's, you know, we've got our business builder course, which is literally like, my staff fucking hate me doing it because they're like, you give everything away. And I'm like, I've not really, but like, it's got all basic like lead generation, how to do content, how to set up a coaching program, how to do sales calls. There's like sales scripts. There's even a fucking sales funnel in there for people.
Right.
Like, there's application forms. Even inside that, we've got draft application forms, draft check-in forms. We've got an interactive meal planner that they can use on Excel that has all like proteins and carbs already stored in it. So it's a bit like my condensed. We've got 12 different workout plans on spreadsheets. And we did that because obviously we wanted it to be accessible to people who were like, I don't even know if I can set up an app at the moment. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
We'd already pre-programmed all the templates and stuff like that. There's 3 recipe guides in there, like recipe packs that we actually sell that we've just given people. So I don't know what more we can do, to be honest with you.
That's huge.
Genuinely, I said this, I was like, we're done with lead magnets because there's fuck all else that we've got. I can't do any more. If I did any more, it would be confusing and it would actually be too much for them. Like it would be higher level stuff that they actually don't need to be wasting the time on.
Sure. So where can people get access to this? Because we'll put a link below the video when it goes live.
Collectivecoaching.co will take you straight to the business builder. Okay, and then
awesome.
Everything will spring off that. There's some upgrades for people who are a bit more advanced that still like haven't got enough to invest in actual coaching. So there's a couple of £99 upgrades there that actually give you our full sections of our course. But yeah, that's honestly start there. And I think I don't know what the YouTube is. I think it's just /Ste McGrath. That full 0 to 5K thing's there. But yeah, outside, like, I genuinely don't know. And that's when people come to us now and they're like, oh, you know, you do this and you do that. I'm like, listen, go do the free stuff and then decide whether you want to work with us or not. Because even if it's, you know, you're above it, you'll get an idea of how we work and how, you know, what our ethos is like. And you can make a decision from there.
What's some of the most common issues you see with like content people are doing? So when people come to you with their social, is there anything that's like a common one across the board that you see people have issue with?
You know what? I think it's just like, again, like worrying too much about what people think of them. Like more like in the industry. For me, like, I think there's a couple of things that happen. I think people potentially try and work with a market that's got money instead of a market that they should be working with because they understand them very well.
Right.
And I think that's more of a scarcity thing for themselves because like they look at like maybe 25-year-olds and think, oh, they're not going to be able to pay high ticket, but they are. Like, it depends what you think high ticket is, to be fair. But like, I think most people, if they've got a real thing that they want to achieve with themselves, they'll pay £200 a month.
For sure.
As a student, I paid £150 a month to go to a gym where they gave you a training program because it was a good gym, and I didn't want to work. I didn't want to work out at the university centre, and like I wasn't even in bad shape. You know, that's what I valued, and at that point, like we, you know, proper like uni student, like tomato sauce on spaghetti and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
We were that low, and I made sure that came out of my student loan, and I paid them when I got my student loan, so it was gone. So like everyone, I think it's, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say £200 a month is affordable for everyone because there are a certain part of the population where it isn't. But for a lot of people, they do have the income. They just don't decide to use it that way. But that's on the coach then. So I think a lot of them work with it. Like, I want to work with busy professionals. Yeah. And like, you need to be more specific than that. And B, I think, they just go for a crowd that maybe they think will pay rather than what it is. Like a lot of people, again, we have people that become fat loss coaches when they don't even like fat loss stuff. Like they don't like body transformations. It's not how they live their lives because they think that fat loss is where the money is. Right. And it's not. Like, goals that people want is where the money is that you can provide. Yeah. And like, you know, we've got clients that work in all sorts of like mad shit, like CrossFit and like sports performance. Some of them are just about like powerlifting, and they do really well because they get good results.
And so I think go on. don't you think you're just going to end up hating your life as well? Like if you think, oh, I'm going to go after people for fat loss, and then and you don't like it, and then that's what you do for the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
You just, every time you go to your check-ins, you're going to be like, for fuck's sake, I don't want to do this.
And I think that's what happens in the bodybuilding community as well.
Right.
It's people don't reflect their own actual ethos within their program, and it starts to unravel because people can tell there's like a false front on it. So like we see a lot of coaches that work with like Gen Pop fat loss that really their passion's in bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And I find that causes a massive conflict with their audience. Like it really hampers the business because on one hand, they're like, oh, you don't need to worry about carbs. Like you don't need to worry about this. Just eat food in moderation. And then the next day they're like, oh, my coach has stopped me eating sugar-free jelly because the sweeteners are in it. And we're trying to like pull water. And then like Debbie sat at home confused, like, oh, I've got to fit in my dress on Saturday. Should I cut out sweet? I want to pull all the water out as well. And I think you've got to really like live the way that you coach, for me personally. And I think that's the argument about being in shape as a coach, isn't it? That a lot of people have, like, it's not whether you've got abs, it's whether you live the lifestyle that will come from. And if you're talking to people about it and that's what you're selling, you should probably reflect it. The same way as if you're going to coach people in relationship with food issues, but you're binging every weekend, it's probably not the best idea in the world.
Yeah.
It's not going to work out very well. So I think finding something that you can coach that you're really going to lead from the front on, because that's what you are as a coach, really. You're a leader, like,
for sure.
That's how you build authority, like you lead. And the coaches that I think do things that are outside of what they actually truly believe in or who they are, they don't build that authority with the audience, and then things don't work very well for them. Like, people don't reply to the messages, like people don't turn up to the phone calls. When people do get on the phone, they're only willing to pay minimum price because they're just not bought into the program or the coach. Not. And I think that's one of the major things with content as well, is like people don't align it all. So people don't have a program that fits the content and the audience that they want to work with and the audience they connect with, and that doesn't fit themselves. And then it just falls a bit flat. They end up almost making it up. Like if a coach says to me, like, I don't know what to post, I'm like, you're working with the wrong audience. You should know exactly what to post every single day. You should get them. And
post content for your audience, not for you, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But then again, it should almost be the same thing though as well, because like stuff that you're talking about should interest you. Like it should be for both. But yeah, you've got to meet your audience where they're at as well. So like you've got to understand that maybe they don't particularly think the way that you do right now, because they're they're like 3 steps behind.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of coaches, like, they oversimplify. Like, I feel like a lot of the time they're so worried about somebody calling them out that like they don't actually market like enough. It's almost like they make the program sound too much like common sense. Like, really, all you have to do is just stop eating as much. And everyone's like, oh, can you pay me £600 for my program? And they're like, well, no, because I feel like all you're going to do is tell me to stop eating as much, which isn't really like, I feel going to be game changing for me, to be honest with you, because I kind of know that already. It's the vehicle that you're going to get me there in that's part of the thing. So like, I think one of the major issues is that people don't make their coaching engaging or fun. It's almost like they've got this like sword to fall on, where they're like, no, it is going to be boring and you do just have to do the same thing every day, which you're probably not wrong, but it's also, not very sellable. Like it's not very enticing for a new client to be like, when they say like, you hear content like, stop asking me when your training program is going to change. It'll be the same for most of your training career. That's what I've done. And look how big I am. And it's like, nobody wants to hear that day one, mate. Like day one, you're like, this program is never going to change. You're going to do the same workout every day for the next 2 years. People are going to be like, don't ever really want to pay for this right now. Like you've got to dress it up in something that's engaging. And I think that's something that I got from teaching, because like, listen, like trying to teach physics was dry, like at times, especially like once you've done all the experiments, like and you're into like the heavy stuff, like you can't do experiments on protons and neutrons. But that's your job. Your job is to take what they need and wrap it in something that they want, so they get the best of both. Like, it's getting people to engage. It's planning engaging activities for people to do. And I feel like coaching is almost devoid of that. And people, because they don't do it in the program, they can't then show it in the content. Sure. And then that kind of turns people, then it just becomes an information kind of thing, which really no one buys information. They buy an experience and they buy a result. And again, like, we used to say people buy a result, but I think the market's moved on a little bit now. And I think they also buy the experience, not just the result. I think that's changed over the last couple of years. I think you used to be able to slap up a couple of before and afters and be like, show me the money. And people would be like, absolutely, just get me from A to B. I don't give a shit whether, you know, how you do it. Whereas I think now people expect to be taken through something a bit more like engaging and progressive. Sure. I think that's something that people probably should try more with marketing. It's not just about giving them the right information. It's about giving them in a vehicle that they'll actually enjoy taking it from and they'll be able to succeed with.
Yeah.
Because I've watched loads of different teachers like try and teach, very clever people as well. Like, there's a bloke that I did my teaching degree with that used to be a VP for AstraZeneca. Okay. And I was like, how the fuck am I going to teach chemistry next to this bloke? Like, this guy's forgotten more about chemistry in the last 2 weeks than I've ever known in my life. Like, the first time he stood in front of a class, I just didn't want to listen to him because he was just an old boring guy. Yeah. A fountain of knowledge. He was probably the best chemist in the fucking room or in the whole school. But that didn't matter because no one listened to him. Yeah, for sure. And even if they would listen to him, they'd have turned off within 5 minutes and retained none of it. Yeah. And I think, again, that's something that I learned from teaching that maybe coaches don't get, because again, there's no real, you know, the business side of it, like the marketing that we do isn't just about making sales. It's about making people enjoy the program and making people enjoy this and come out the other end. And I think people like say, oh, it's sharp marketing, that it's pulling the wool over people's eyes. And it's like, well, it's not. It's just doing it in a fun and engaging manner so people carry on. And this like all loops back around to what you were saying about the coach actually being aligned with what they're selling. Because if you believe in what you're selling and you live it and you breathe it, then you're going to make it fun for your clients because you just enjoy the day-to-day of what you're doing. And it's about breaking away maybe from what you think is like perfection. Yeah. Because like you can't get perfection from like people that are step one in the journey. It's got to be a progressive thing, but you try and force them into perfection day one. Like, we know you don't need to do this. You don't need to do that. I know doing an arms blast is fun at the end of your workout, but it's not going to make any differences in the size of your arms. Like, you just need to do dips and chins, and we're like, fucking great, but do I really want to be doing that? Like, yeah. So like, it's almost like, and you know, the very strict like coaches that maybe work B2B that enjoy like calling out this kind of stuff, like, don't understand maybe what it's like working with like generic people, because it's always the more serious coaches that work with the more serious athletes that like call that kind of stuff out. And it's like, well, yeah, but you've got a very advanced kind of client that's going to come to you and be like, I just want the result. I'll do whatever you want because you're this kind of person. But it doesn't fly at the bottom of the industry for like, you know, Johnny who just comes in. Like, you can make, you know, like the new biomechanics is a huge thing now, isn't it? Like, everyone's doing perfect exercise. But like, think about the kind of people that like these young lads are going to work with. Like, these young lads that come to the gym are not going to work with, you know, extremely advanced, highly muscled individuals that are so confident in the gym that they'll bring a fucking 50 Shades of Grey bag with all these bands and chains and whatever in it, and take 15 minutes to set up an exercise. A lot of these guys just want to get in, not look like a fucking idiot, like fly under the radar, get the work done and leave. So like, it's all well good you saying like, oh, this is a shit exercise, but like, it's not unuseful. It's just maybe not a perfect exercise, but you're not gonna get them to set up this, you know, perfect nobody's gonna bring a band in and loop it around a Smith machine at like 5 p.m. when the guy's like, how many sets have you got left? And you're like, well, it's gonna take me 15 minutes to rig all this up. Then I've got to do my 2 sets. I've got to take 9 minutes rest in between because that's the perfect scientific. Right. And then I've got to take it all down. And somebody's going to be like, take the fucking band off and I'll just work in with you.
Very true.
About practicality as well as like, you know, kind of what perfection.
We like there's the gym I go to, there's a personal trainer who he takes in his bag with everything, and he has clients that are like 60 years old, probably skinny, like look like runners, and he will spend 10 minutes, just like you described, putting every possible contraption onto a machine with bands and hooks and pulleys and whatever he can find, and then puts his client into it and gets them to do the weirdest possible shit you could imagine. And then he films it all to post on his social media. And you can see as his client is doing it, they're like, well, it feels weird, so I guess it must be working. But at no point do I think they're actually engaging with it.
Yeah, I mean, but that's depending on who that person is, it might benefit them. Like if they're a bit older and they're a big dude and the skinny runner guy's gonna be like, this is why he's so big. This is the fucking secret. Like this.
I know he's skinny too. The personal trainer's tiny.
Right, but that's probably. But you know what I mean? Like it could work for you and against you, but you've got to kind of be honest about who you are. Like if you're an absolute mutant and you're telling people to do this kind of stuff, they're gonna be like, oh, I need all that stuff because that's what's got him there, and that's what
For sure.
all his clients are massive and they all do that. I want to be like them. But if you're just getting into it, you can't try and do that and impress everyone that's like a biomechanics expert because actually it's going to detract your business.
It's almost like
it's to tell them, like, if you've been in the game for like 40 years and you've got 1 million client results, you can be like, listen, this is what you need to do. You want results like this, you want to work with someone as experienced as me, you're going to be expected to do the work. If you're like 23 and you're just in the industry, you need to do what your client will do, not like what you tell them to do, because you've just not got that level of authority yet.
Yeah, for sure. Mate, this has been incredible. I really appreciate it. Can I ask you one last question before we finish up? Okay. If you're in your fitness business, not doing your coaching business, right? You're in your fitness business, and tomorrow you wake up and Instagram is gone, disappeared. You've been kicked off for good. Facebook, you're off. TikTok, you're off. YouTube, you're off. What would you do tomorrow to get it all back, or where would you start?
You know what I would do personally if I was in my fitness business.
Yeah.
For me, this is probably going to be useless to us. I'm really good at making sales, so I'd ring up someone who had a really big business and be like, "Yo, do you need someone to do sales?" And I'd probably just do that first while I rebuilt everything, so I had some cash flow coming in. Well, it depends if you knew how long you've been in the business for. If I'm new to the industry, I would potentially just get in front of a crowd where there's people. So I would be asking to give presentations to maybe businesses that were similar to mine, but not quite the same, like forming relationships with like physios and stuff like that, like maybe nutritionists if I did training, like somebody that could complement what I do so I could get in front of their audience faster. If I was more established, I'd probably just go back through my old network and look at, people that I've worked with previously or previous inquiries. And I would use that to start building it back up. The social stuff's hard, isn't it? Because it's like the easiest way to deal with that is to kind of preempt that happening and make sure you've got phone numbers and make sure you've got emails. And that's something that like we push quite like hard with our clients because, you own that data. Whereas like obviously Instagram, you don't own. It's like you're renting it from them. But we say that to people all the time, especially people with quite large followings and stuff like, oh, do you have an email list? I'm like, oh, we don't really make any sales from email. And I'm like, no, you don't now. But if your Instagram goes, you'll have to. And it's like, when somebody says, oh, have you got income protection insurance? And you're like, oh yeah, I'll get that next week. And then they never do.
Yeah.
And that's what happens then when people's Instagram goes down. It's because they've relied on it for too long instead of just building that stuff up in the background, even if you don't use it.
Yeah, and it can happen. I've had a few friends in the industry with hundreds of thousands of followers, even one at the moment who he's been kicked off. And that's the backbone of his business is Instagram.
I see that happening, but like you said, it's with a very select group of people. I think maybe it's just because that's the kind of people that I've heard it off. But like that's been happening really recently to like a certain group of like high followers, like people that like I don't see anyone with like 2,000 followers getting their account shut down. Like it's generally people with like larger followings. And like for me, I genuinely feel like it's some sort of like extortion thing. that somebody's then going to come back to them in a couple of months and be like, oh, give me this much money and I'll get your account back, or I'll give you your account back.
Yeah.
Because I just don't see, unless they're clicking on things that they shouldn't be clicking and people are grabbing the passwords and stuff. And like, I just feel like it's happening to a very select group of people at the moment. I don't know whether you've noticed the same thing.
Well, I've seen different scenarios. I've seen ones where people have definitely clicked the wrong link and then they've been locked out because someone's hacked them, taken their password. But then this one person in particular, their account is literally gone from Instagram. Like, it's completely been removed.
Oh, and there's no talk of like it got disabled because of this. It's just disappeared.
Yeah, it's gone. And he's just like contacted Instagram asking them what's happened. And you just fill out this form and then you just have to wait.
Yeah, they are a bit like that. It's
so hard to get it back.
I feel like what kills people in that scenario, when that does happen, is it's almost like it takes them too long to accept it. So like for me, like if our Instagram account got shut down, like I'd be on it tomorrow.
Yeah, same.
And if I got the account back, cool. Like, fair enough.
Yeah.
But like I would, for every second after that account went down, I would be treating the rest of my business like I was never going to get that account back, because
for sure.
I don't have time to wait for a form to come through and to see whether that's going to happen. So like, think that if that does happen, like the biggest bit of advice I could give people is move quickly, like, and act like it's not going to come back. And then if it does, it's a bonus. But if it, you could, every day that you're waiting for it to come back, that you're not taking action on the next step, even if you're half-arsing it, like you can't do that. You can't run businesses that way. You can't run businesses with like one foot in one kind of camp and another one in another. You have to go all in if you're going to make a difference, I think. So I think for me, like that would be, there's tactics. Like it doesn't take that long, especially if you've got a decent network. That if everyone gets banned, then you're fucked. But like you can get your account back round fairly quickly. And like I know some of them, like I know someone's account got banned who had like 200,000 followers and they made like a silly amount off it per month. And like it'd be hard to replicate that, immediately. But if you can get back up to like 2,000-3,000 followers in the space of, 30 days or so, which I think if you leverage your network correctly, you can. Like you've got some clients that do that normally anyway. Like they grow by that amount of followers by just using certain tactics that we give them. You can make 8-10 grand a month off 3,000 followers.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point to make as well, because a lot of people chase the followers, but it's the quality of your audience and how aligned they are with you that's going to be the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, listen, we've got people at all ends of the spectrum. Like, we've got people that have large followings that maybe don't have the businesses that you would expect. We've got some people with large followings that do have the businesses that you expect that earn really well. We have some people that, have 3,000 followers that make 10 grand a month, like, and all kind of spectrums in between. It is about how well you monetize the audience, not just the size of it. And I think that actually for certain people, they almost sometimes get a bit lazy if they have a lot of followers. Spending your time on monetizing your audience and learning the skills to do better with a smaller audience, because it'll always grow out. Like if you're really good at monetizing 3,000 people, if you get to 30,000 people, your business is going to be miles better than if you just focus on getting new followers.
Yeah, for sure.
And just winning by like war of attrition with sheer amount of numbers, certain people are going to pay you.
Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I know how valuable it is, and there's loads of useful information there for people to take away. Where can they find you on Instagram?
My Instagram is Ste _McGrath. That's McGrath. And if you go to our website, collectivecoaching.co, I couldn't get .com or .co.uk for some reason, so it's .co. But if you go there, you can download our business builder, and then you'll get pulled into a web of emails and Facebook groups and Instagram and YouTube anyway. So you can find us there.
Fantastic. And we'll put those links below the video for everyone. Thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem, mate. Thank you very much.